do that. So I'm excited to see people coming to the field doing things that they had necessarily done before, finding ways to be involved in our art form where people had not found belonging previous. And so I'm really excited to see what elements will remain and what practices that we are carrying that will be left behind. This is truly an innovative time of change that is going to affect our field forever. And I think we're really fortunate to be here as active participants and leaders helping facilitate that change.
That's awesome. Have you been asked in your new role with MMEA to talk to counties and county leaders of education, specifically with the looming cuts in education and just of necessity, so that the counties and the regions can balance their budgets, and conversations that would have to defend the continuation of the teaching of music and chorus specifically?
Yeah, so I have not done much advocacy work directly to county superintendents and district art supervisors myself. But I'm working with folks, specifically arts education in Maryland schools, AIMS. They're kind of they're the unifying factor between all of these individual, the art and the dance and the theater and the music. We collectively have had joint advocacy statements. For instance, when the back to school guidance from Dr. Salmon, the state superintendent, came out, there was some language there that we were not comfortable with, that we knew needed to change in order to help facilitate saving arts programs. And so we came together, we wrote a joint petition and blasted that out to the membership of all those various organizations. And so yes, we absolutely are focused on advocacy efforts to save programs and budgets. Knock on wood, it is seemingly that the funding and the cuts aren't going to be as big of an issue this year. For fall 2020, we're going to be okay. There are probably some retirements that are not going to be filled. There are probably someone moving to another program and their previous school won't fill that position. We see that every year anyway. That'll probably tick up a little bit. But in terms of entire districts saying we're not having any arts at all, I don't foresee that in the fall of 2020. What I do foresee is a much bigger task at hand for saving programs for fall 2021. We're going to have, right now we've had a quarter of lost tax revenue. Come fall 2021, we will have 18 months of lost tax revenue. And that's really where it's going to start to hurt, and very deep cuts are going to have to be made. Right now, it's seeming that projected growth and investment in the arts and in education, it's going to be status quo funding. There's not going to be anything added, but we're not going to cut. But next year is when we're focused on that. So I'm working with those colleagues. Quanice Floyd is the executive director at AIMS. I work with her closely, and we are working with all those other arts serving organizations as well. We'll have a virtual presence in Annapolis to advocate. The National Association for Music Education, of course, does great work on Capitol Hill on a daily basis with their staff of lobbyists lobbying on behalf of music education at the federal level. And there are things that you can do as active participants in the field. For instance, NAFME has the National Association for Music Education has a grassroots action center where you can simply click in and send a letter, a pre-written letter, to all of your elected officials in Washington, D.C. saying, we need funding for education by X date before cuts are starting to make because the budgets haven't been backfilled on the state level. Or the Arts Education is Essential document that the National Association for Music Education led that effort, a joint statement of hundreds of arts education serving organizations across the country. So there are many efforts that we're doing. If it's something that I'm directly involved in, or a project that's happening within our affiliate structure that I'm making sure our members know about, we are actively engaged in advocacy efforts in a way that we really haven't been, at least not to this extent before, in the Maryland Music Educators Association. And there's work to be done in your choirs as well. Just because we don't traditionally advocate or think about advocacy as part of our typical day-to-day annual approach as choristers, at least in my 27 years, I haven't thought of the necessity of needing to be an active advocate for choral music. Of course, we're seeing that we have to be now, but when there are advocacy efforts to provide funding to nonprofit organizations, payroll protection plan, advocating for arts funding, or the National Foundation for the Arts, or cuts for the Kennedy Center. Big things like that have a trickle-down effect. While it may not say, help us save ACDA or help us save Chorus America, it may not be that blatantly honest, blatantly obvious of what the ask is, but there are definitely steps that we can all take to have our voice be heard and have support and funding and policies in place that better enable the work that we do as leaders in the choral field. So keep an eye out for those things that aren't blatantly obvious. Support choirs. There are ways for you to be involved.
That's awesome. I'm going to make sure that at that point in the interview, I give the link in some way or fashion for the NAFME grassroots link. But I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sending a PDF of that advocacy, or a link to where I would where a viewer would go to see what that advocacy document is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that would be great. And it's so powerful to hear you speak from two positions, or even three positions. So you're in a board situation, board leadership for a choral society, a community chorus, where you're actively engaged in making the collaborative composing, creating process part of how we continue to Zoom meet, make music. You're in the catbird seat for the state of Maryland, and moving music educators forward, both band, strings, chorus, general music, but music, so that you're looking forward to how educators continue to innovate and take some of the innovations from this moment into how we evolve after the pandemic is in some kind of abeyance. And then to know that you're also advocating as your own singer and wanting to be the chorister, and with that, I think those are just amazing things to put together, and that they make your perspective so powerful. I love that. Yeah, I love that you're hearing. I love hearing that you're talking about how we just need to continue to go on. We need to make sure that we see that it's not this immediate horizon in the fall, even though if any teachers are like me, we're just still thinking, oh my gosh, everything I used to do, I can't do. And whatever that last quarter of the year was, I've got to do better than that. And I only have this many weeks to figure out how to do that. It kind of reminds me of that Apollo 13 moment where they have to fix something that goes in a square hole with only these devices in 40 minutes and go.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, absolutely right.
Wow.
I've grown up hearing my grandmother say, for whatever it may be, if it's a death in the family or a move or any kind of life transition, her advice is, you just deal with it and move on. And I think that the simplicity of that is so, so important for us to hold on to right now. We just have to deal with it and move on, because that's the only way that we can move is forward, and to come together with all of those different groups, as you were mentioning, our boards and our our ensemble members and our affiliate or professional associations. We've got to all come together if we're going to make it through this. And I'm honestly really, really excited for the future and just to see where we're going to move on to.
That's outstanding. Other things, Lisa?
I think you've given us some very healthy perspectives, and you've given me actually some things to think about. So I think we have a lot of great information from you. I'd really love to see you take a drink of water because I really think you need one. As a singer.
I know. I get started in these webinars and I just go,
and you go, and you're like,
where's the water? I need to stop.
I was like, where's the water? Well, mine's behind the screen here if I really got desperate. Anyway, no, I think one of the things that we have to consider, and you talked about this a lot, is the idea that we have to learn not to live on our own. We can't live on our own island anymore. That we have to reach out, and we can't be afraid to reach out. I think that's one of the points that I want to try to make in the live piece that we'll do with this, is that everyone that we've spoken with to date has said that collaboration is the way through. So there's a part of me, there's some kind of a hashtag that's got to come through about, collaboration in the arts, or collaborate America, or whatever we can come up with. But I think the idea that we figure out how to pair our choristers together somehow. I have something internationally that I'm thinking about doing. And then after hearing you speak today, it's like, wow, well, why haven't I reached out to you to see, you have singers in the area and I have singers in Fairfax, and why aren't we pairing up? Because at some point we could have a socially distant picnic or something, right? To keep us singing. But for me, I'm on a soapbox, so Michael, you'll have to stop me in a second here. The idea is that advocacy has always been an issue, but instead of it just coming from the conductors at this point, it's got to come from everyone in the organization. Because if we're going to save our own choirs for the moment, and I just got a really long survey from Kennedy Center this morning about how, if we did these checkbox things, would you think about coming back? Or how would you come back? Or what would you pay if we kept things virtual? So, every arts organization is throwing spaghetti against the wall. And I think we've got to figure out how to not throw the spaghetti and try to pick it up, and make a really nice bolognese.
Yeah, to your point about collaboration, in my time with the National Association for Music Education, I heard teachers all the time say that they felt like an island in their building as the only music educator in the building. And that is certainly understandable when you are a one of a kind in a building. But we have to open our mind to think, okay, if there are 66,000 members in the National Association for Music Education alone, and we know statistically that that's about half the number of music educators in the country, right? We are not alone. We're not alone. And if COVID is teaching us anything, it's how to use technology to connect with people so we can have those interactive times, so we can, call up a friend on FaceTime in the middle of the day and say, hey, I'm having this issue. What do you think? Or, I can't quite get this idea to communicate to the student. Listen to what I'm saying to them and listen to what they're singing back to me. And maybe you have a different perspective, Michael, in the moment that you can tell them on our FaceTime call, and boom, it's done. And there's so many ways for us to think about how we can better collaborate on professional development, on advocacy, on pedagogy, because of technology and that collaboration. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if anybody still thinks of themselves as an island, please reach out to me, because I would love to be the first person to help you connect with another music educator, as we are all collaborating right now to make it through this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.